Mr. Garrett of New Jersey for 2.5 minutes.
I thank the chairman. I thank all the members of the panel as well, and specifically Mr. Mahoney, because I'm just going to steal a little of your thunder because I think you made a good point in your remarks. Mr. Mahoney is the Dean of University of Virginia Law School, and in your remarks, which you'll go into more detail, but I just want to point this out, you say that one approach that is used, I think, which is the Republican post, believes that it was a mistake to bail out creditors of failed institutions when bankruptcy proceedings were a tried and true alternative option. And this school of thought believes that policymakers should make it clear going forward that these mistakes will not be repeated and take steps to limit Treasury's and the Federal Reserve's ability to commit funds to failed institutions in the future. So as I say, I think this approach is basically, in a nutshell, what the Republican Financial Service Reform Plan is all about. The other approach is to concede that the government will not refuse to bail out certain large institutions and attempt to take steps to deal with their risky behavior, as the chairman just says. But, you know, if regulators fail to adequately limit their behavior, then a formal bailout framework will have to be set up in the meantime, and firms will be bailed out in a manner of course. So as I say, the administration's plan basically follows this blueprint. The administration's approach is premised on the anticipation that regulatory oversight will compensate for misaligned incentives. But we know time and time again regulators have proved to be behind the curve and unable to keep up with the practices of companies that are tasked with regulating. So we don't need to make their job any harder by encouraging destructive behavior through misaligned incentives. I do believe that the Republican plan is preferable because it is based on a more sound premise. It would reduce moral hazard because companies and their creditors and counterparties would be responsible for the costs associated with their failures, not the taxpayers. And when companies and creditors have their own money on the line rather than other people's money, sounder decisions are made benefiting the entire financial system. We saw what happened when Fannie and Freddie profits were privatized and risks were socialized. We don't want to repeat those mistakes time over again by following the administration's proposal, which would create a whole privileged class of new Fannie and Freddies while institutionalizing an entire regime that will lead to expected and actual future bailouts. These would be bailouts that would be paid for by the American taxpayer and smaller financial institutions, those that won't even benefit from the government's too big to fail imprimatur in the first place. And I thank you, and I thank Mr. Mahoney.